Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to look at 3 more interesting signs that seem to be church specific, meaning they're messages specifically for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You know, either something happened or was going to happen around the time that these signs occurred. And I got 3 of them. So this is one that we're looking at right here, the Great Daylight Fireball of 1972 that I had no idea about, but it came at a very, very interesting time. So we're going to go through that. We're also going to go through, I swear there's been at least a few people during the course of my channel that have talked about something that happened the day after President Ezra Taft Benson passed away. And I tried to find that thing, but then somebody brought it up in a comment, and so I was able to find it, and I'll show you what happened the day after he passed away. And then the last one has to do with President Nelson when he was in Seattle. There was like a special Seattle area devotional or conference that they had, and something very interesting happened there. But as usual, before we get into the meat of the video, let's look at the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge. This is where we're sharing the Book of Mormon with as many people as possible. It's a good idea to go through your contacts list. Anybody that you know that's not a member of the church. Just remember, it's really easy right now to share the Book of Mormon because it doesn't have to be a physical copy. There's a Book of Mormon app. And if you go to the Gospel Library app and go to Scriptures, there's a share button to share the link for that Book of Mormon app that's designed for people that aren't members of the church, that don't know much about the Book of Mormon. So just remember, it's ideal to make that experience of sharing the Book of Mormon as personal as possible, but sometimes it's not because it's only an acquaintance or you don't really know that person. But something is better than nothing, right? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So for all you know, even though you may not know that person very well, maybe it was somebody that you just did a transaction with on Facebook Marketplace, for example. You went and bought some new roosting bars for your chicken coop, for example. You know, maybe you could send them, give them a thank you and give them text them a link or, direct message them the Book of Mormon app. So anyway, right now we're at 6,273. We're trying to get to 10,000, which would be amazing. We have 644 people that have joined, which is up 3 from the last time that I updated it on the 16th. Oh, that's not right. I didn't change the date. This would actually be the 17th. I messed that up. Okay. And then this month we have 4 reports of people meeting with the missionaries and then 2 baptisms. So really good job, everybody. Take those shots that you otherwise would not have taken. And let's just see what happens. Okay, so you might recall that I have this spreadsheet. It's under the tab down here called Timeline Church Specific Signs. And it's one of my many spreadsheets where I'm trying to keep track of all these different things. And on this one, it's signs that seem to be specifically for the church. I'd like to do a review of this at the end, just like a big picture overall review of everything that I have on here, just like really quickly, just point by point. But we'll get to that at the end of the video. So I got this email from Laurel K. She sent me a link for a Facebook video. So I'm not going to be able to show the video here, but I'm really glad that she brought this up because I had no idea that this took place. The Great Daylight Fireball of 1972. This famous photo depicts an Earth-grazing meteor, a comparatively rare event. Okay, and you can see it right here. You can see like the smoke trail that it's leaving behind. Okay, the photo above, a rather famous one, was taken 51 years ago today. And by the way, it's interesting because this article came up. I don't know. I think this is like a blog. It's called gardenofmemory.net. But anyway, this article is by Sean Munger, and it's only 11 days old. I don't know if like it's because we're at the anniversary point of this thing. That's why like Laurel came across it on Facebook. Sean Munger wrote this article, but anyway, the photo above, a rather famous one, was taken 51 years ago today, August 10th, 1972. Put down in the comments how old you were when this happened, and let me know if you heard about this. Were you alive at the time? Did you hear about it later? If you were born later, let me know if you knew about this. I'd be interested to know. Okay, at Jackson Lake, Wyoming. Okay, this is Jackson Lake, Wyoming. That looks like the Grand Tetons back there. If you don't notice it immediately, it'll become clear after a few seconds of looking at it. The fiery object crossing the sky in a glowing trail. The mountains in the background, are the Tetons. The fireball became visible at about 2:30 that afternoon over Utah. So this was kind of the first little bit of information that made me think there could be something significant about this in relation to the church. Okay, and I think there is. Just wait. Okay, and streaked across the sky in a northerly direction, exiting the Earth's atmosphere over the Canadian province of Alberta. So this didn't actually, it didn't end up crashing or like burning in the atmosphere, like disintegrating the atmosphere, or if it was big enough, it didn't like land on Earth. It basically just skimmed the atmosphere and then returned back into space. Okay. All right. The Great Daylight Fireball, also known as the Grand Teton Meteor, was a particularly spectacular example of a comparatively rare event. An Earth-grazing meteor that bounced off our atmosphere, rather like a stone skipping across the surface of a pond, instead of impacting somewhere on the ground. Astronomers have estimated that the meteor involved in this event was about the size of a small truck and probably passed within about 35 miles of the Earth's surface. Okay, so that's all I have for this article. So it is a really cool photo. I mean, the Grand Tetons and then this thing streaking above the Grand Tetons. And then there are some videos too. I can't play them here. They're on YouTube. I'm not going to go through the time to like download these, and then it's just not my style, as you know. But I'll leave the links in the description below in case you want to watch them. So there's this one, and then there's a different one right here. Two different channels, and I'm sure there's probably more. Okay, so it started in Utah, right? Oh yeah, one more thing before we get into that. On Wikipedia it says, okay, over Utah in past northward. Okay, we read that. An eyewitness to the event, located in Missoula, Montana, saw the object pass directly overhead and heard a double sonic boom. Now, I'm not familiar enough with meteors and fireballs. It's the same thing. I know that sometimes they will cause a boom. In fact, if you go to the I think it's called the American Meteor Society. Let's see, American Meteor, no, not meteorological, Meteor. Yeah, American Meteor Society. You can submit reports here. Of course, it's going to take it forever to pull up under fireball logs. And you can go on here and see, what meteors have been reported. And one of the things that they keep track of is if it causes a boom that can be heard from the ground. Man, this is taking a long time. Anyway, that's not the point of the video. So there are plenty of times when there is sound. Oh yeah, here you go. See, so in these columns on the far right, D sound and C sound. I don't know what that stands for. Oh, concurrent sound, and then this probably delayed. Yeah, delayed sound. So if you heard it right away, or did you hear it after you saw it? So then you report it down here. And as you can see, probably most of them you don't really hear anything, but some of them you do. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if a double boom is very common. If you know more about meteors, let me know. Is it common for there to be a double boom? I don't know. But going back to this, there was a double sonic boom. Okay? So Utah to Alberta, double sonic boom, a rare daytime fireball, and then it was one that didn't end up, crashing to Earth. It's just skimmed off the atmosphere and then back into space. Okay, so I decided to look at what happened in the church around that time. So remember, this is August 10th, 1972. That's when this occurred. So I just started searching things, and on Deseret News's Church News, thankfully they have these articles called Major Events 1970 to 1979. I'm sure they've probably done one for each decade. But I went through here, and around the time of the fireball, this is what was going on. So earlier that year, you had the Ogden, Utah temple that was dedicated by President President Joseph Fielding Smith, and then just a month later, the Provo, Utah temple. And then a few months after that, President Joseph Fielding Smith died, July 2nd. And then on July 7th, or in other words, 7/7, it's interesting, President Harold B. Lee was ordained and set apart as president of the church. And then it was a month after that, in August, July, August, that's when this happened. Okay? So that's kind of interesting that this would happen just a month after he becomes president of the church. Let's go back here. And he didn't remain president of the church for very long. He passed away the next year on the day after Christmas, December 26, 1973. So here you have both of them. Okay. In fact, both of them, relatively speaking, they didn't really serve for very long. Joseph Fielding Smith for 2 years and 5 months. Harold B. Lee only 1 year and 5 months. And then, compare that to these other ones, 18 years, 5, 26, 17, 3. So very short. The only other one that would really compare in terms of how short a time they were president of the church is Howard W. Hunter, which wasn't even a full year. It was only 9 months. All right. Right now, President Nelson is at 5 years and 7 months, and it seems like he's still going strong. Okay. So anyway, so you had this going on, this changing of the guard, so to speak. When I thought about when I was reading that part about the double sonic boom, and I was looking at these different things, like that page that we were just looking at, I was thinking about the Ogden and Provo, Utah temple. The reason why is because these are two, well, not so much anymore, but when they were first constructed, they were kind of these two twin temples with the same architecture. So let me show you, in case you don't know what they used to look like. This is what the Ogden temple used to look like. Now it's been renovated. And then you have the Provo temple, which I don't think it's renovated yet. I should have left this up. So Ogden, Utah temple, Wikipedia. So here's what the Ogden temple looks like now. And I personally, I'm glad that they did this. I'm not a fan of this very, very 60s, 70s aesthetic, but I know that some people are fond of this, and especially if this was the temple that got your initiatories endowments, got sealed in this temple. I'm sure that this is a really nice memory for you and that you really love this temple. But stepping outside of that, I think overall this was probably a good idea, because things from the 60s and 70s, um, everything from like cartoons to, well, architecture, a lot of times like you'll see those banks that like are in the same type of design, like old banks from that time frame. It just, I don't think that it aged very well. Um, and I think that's why they decided to change it. As far as the Provo Temple goes, I don't think that it's been renovated yet, but it's going to be. Yeah, so that's why they still have this picture up on Wikipedia. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, it's interesting that they were both constructed around the same time, dedicated around the same time, and that they were these twin temples. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the symbolic nature of the meteor, but just something to think about. But there's something even more, way more significant than that. So I searched high and low, looking into President Lee and President Joseph Fielding Smith. This is President Howard B. Lee right here. Just trying to see if there was like anything else. Were any of them from Alberta? Did they get married in Alberta or like anything like that? No, I didn't find anything for Alberta. But what I did find for President Lee was this. This is from Presidents of the Church Student Manual for Institute. Okay, Chapter 11, Harold B. Lee, 11th President of the Church. Which you could say right there is a double, a 1-1. But anyway. So it goes through like this timeline, his age, and then, some significant event that took place. And it turns out that during the very short time that he was president of the church, he organized the Jerusalem, oh my gosh, the Jerusalem, you try and say that. You try and say it fast. Jerusalem. Jerusalem branch. There we go. Jerusalem branch. He organized that on the 20th of September, 1972. Now, the church, very, very early on in the church, there were missionaries in that area. And from what I studied, at one point there was a Turkey mission, and Palestine, quote unquote, was part of the Turkey mission. And there's that story of the two missionaries that ended up getting sick there, and they died, and they buried them, and their graves are still there to this day with headstones. Now, it's my understanding that that was part of how the church was able to legally get recognition in Israel to build the BYU Jerusalem Center. I saw another article by somebody else that said that no, that wasn't necessary, that it's just kind of like a legend. I don't really know at this point, but anyway, the church did have a presence there for a while, and it's not like this was the very first branch within the land of Israel, what is now the state of Israel, because it didn't exist back then. But as far as I know, this would be the first official like establishment of the church in Jerusalem itself. Okay, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that there was ever a branch in the city of Jerusalem before this happened. So this happened a month after the meteor. Okay, so let's go to my Second Coming timeline. I have this added now. So in July, President Lee becomes president of the church. The next month, you have this meteor. And then the month after that, he organizes the Jerusalem branch. So this is why I feel there's probably something to this. There's probably something to this. Let's see, let's get back to this. If you go to BYUJerusalemAlumni.com, they have this timeline, historical timeline, church and BYU Jerusalem travel study dates. And I guess by extension, just general church history in Jerusalem. I'd like to see a detailed timeline of church history in Jerusalem, which I know that there's not like a whole lot. We've gone over the different dedications of the Holy Land. Orson Hyde, he was the first to dedicate it, but we've covered before the other dedications that took place after that. There was a number of them. But anyway, I have it on my timeline here, but anyway, you go down here, you have these bullet points. Orson Hyde dedicates the Holy Land. Approval for a BYU travel study in the Holy Land. ILA takes possession of land where center will be built. First BYU study abroad to Jerusalem. Second program to Jerusalem and program suspended. And then 1972, September, President Harold B. Lee visit to the Holy Land. And let's click on continue reading. There's him coming out of the garden tomb. President Harold B. Lee visits Jerusalem along with Elder Gordon B. Hinckley, during which they established the Jerusalem branch of the church with David Galbraith, resident director of Jerusalem Study Abroad program, as branch president. In a visit with the chief rabbi, they were asked whether the church intends to proselytize in the Holy Land. President Lee responds that the church does not come through the back door, only when invited through the front door. David Galbraith proposes the creation of a memorial to Orson Hyde in Jerusalem. President Lee authorizes Galbraith to look for land for that purpose. All right. So this event, it made it onto this timeline right here. It was a significant event, and we still have that branch today, right? So you have the different branches here. In fact, I think it's the Jerusalem district. I think it's going to say that in one of these things that we're about to read. But the one in Jerusalem, of course, meets at the BYU Jerusalem Center, right? When you click on this, you have Jerusalem branch. And then in Tel Aviv, there's this one where you have the Tel Aviv branch and the Jordan River branch. I was told, I don't know if something changed, but there was one time where I think the Jordan River branch, like, it had like a different like icon for it, and it was like over here somewhere, and I was like, but it doesn't look like that matches up with a building. Somebody said that they were, I talked to somebody that knows, and they said that the Jordan River branch actually just met online, but maybe that's changed, and maybe now they meet in Tel Aviv. I don't know. But anyway, you have those two branches, and then according to this, the church meeting house locator, there's this one. It doesn't say a name of a branch. It just has a meeting house in Omer. So I don't know. If you know, let me know. So all that I think would be the Jerusalem district. So, and who knows what the future of this branch is going to be. At some point, most likely after the second coming, it's going to become a ward, even though there may have been other branches in the past, because that story about the missionaries, that took place up here in Haifa, or near Haifa, near Mount Carmel over here. In fact, that's where they're buried, somewhere around here. But anyway, as you can see, there's no longer a branch that still exists from that time. So if we're talking about continuity, it seems like as we go into the millennium, the Jerusalem branch, which will at that point become, Jerusalem ward or whatever, it's going to be the oldest branch in the church in Israel. So that's just an interesting little fact. I looked at the time when this was dedicated. Okay, here we are, September 1972, looking at the Gregorian and the Hebrew calendar. And it didn't come during one of the Jewish holidays, but it did come 2 days after Yom Kippur. Okay, Yom Kippur that year was on Monday, the 18th, and then 2 days later, that's when the branch was organized. Don't know that there's necessarily significance to that, but the general time of year is interesting, that it would happen during the time of the high holy days and Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, because you have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot, right? So it happened during that season. Okay. Here's this. This is from BYU Library Special Collections. The Jerusalem branch of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a branch of the church that operates in Jerusalem, Israel. The Jerusalem branch was organized in the early 1970s when the church in Israel was administered from Switzerland. At that time, several senior missionary couples were called to serve as special representatives for the church. In 1985, missionaries that had been sent to serve in the branch were removed due to the conflict regarding the building of the BYU Jerusalem Center. An agreement was soon reached and missionaries returned. Currently, the Jerusalem branch is assigned to the Middle East/Africa North area. Although there are some native members, non-Israeli citizens constitute the bulk of church membership. Okay, and then I just wanted to go over this. Again, here's Jeffrey R. Holland. He has a pretty, he's pretty connected to Israel. He was part of the whole BYU Jerusalem Center becoming a reality in Jerusalem, and anyway, we've done videos about that, and hopefully he's okay. Just prayers for him. My understanding is that he's still in the hospital, and I don't know, just prayers for him. I hope that he makes it out of this, but I don't know. Okay, leaders address members of the Jerusalem district. Elder Holland and Elder Cook, accompanied by Elder James J. Hamula, General Authority 70, and their wives, Sister Patricia T. Holland, Sister Mary G. Cook, and Sister Joyce A. Hamula, were part of a delegation of Latter-day Saints and Jewish dignitaries from the United States who gathered at a historic site in Jerusalem to mark the 175th anniversary of Elder Orson Hyde dedicating the land as a gathering place for the Jewish people. We've covered this visit before on the channel. During this same visit, him and Elder Cook met with Benjamin Netanyahu, the mayor of Jerusalem, and other people. It was I don't know, it seemed like it was a pretty important one, but that was the purpose, to do the thing with the Elder Orson Hyde park there. Latter-day Saints in the Jerusalem district are valiant, said Elder Holland. Quote, the members have been very devoted, very faithful to the council to live the gospel, but they are not free to talk openly about it, lest it be interpreted as proselyting. So, and I think that probably concerns all members of the church, because whenever I read the proselyting agreement, because I was trying to get down to, when it comes to the BYU Jerusalem Center, can that be changed to some other type of building like a temple? I haven't been able to find anything that says that it can't be used for anything else. The main concern, the only thing that I can find at all, has to do with proselyting, because that's what the Jews are concerned with. They're finally, after 2,000 years, coming back to their homeland, and so it's basically a threat. It's like they're an endangered people, and so they're trying to preserve their religion. So, anyway, so that's why, if ever you wonder, whenever I do my interviews with Rabbi Gerfein, that's why I don't really bring up our beliefs, because when I read the proselyting agreement, it seems like it applies not just to people in Israel, but really if you're outside of Israel, you still shouldn't proselyte to people in Israel, not necessarily to Jews. If it's like a Jew that's here in the United States, that's fine. But like talking to somebody in Israel that's a Jew, well, anybody in Israel, you shouldn't do that. Okay. For more than 4 decades, church members and BYU students in Jerusalem have honored a non-proselyting agreement. Quote, God knows everything about the state of Israel. This is Elder Holland talking. Everything about the future of the state of Israel. He can do his own work in his own time. Meanwhile, we need to be ready, alert, attentive, and be good people. All right, later, The church's Jerusalem district covers a large area, including the state of Israel and the West Bank, and includes 4 branches in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Bethlehem, and Galilee. So this is back from 2016. It doesn't jive with the meeting house locator, but I don't know. I don't know how it all works. If you know the present makeup of the different branches in Israel, put it in the comments below. You know, because it doesn't say that there's like a Bethlehem branch here. Anyway, let me know if you know. Quote, because of the distances, lack of vehicles, no running public transportation on the Sabbath, and employment conflicts, many of these members are unable to attend church at one of the branches. It is a real challenge to be a member of the church in Israel, end quote. Okay. So that's all I have for that one. So just to recap, you have this rare daytime fireball that started in Utah and went up northward. Okay, now the next one, let's move on to what happened the day after President Benson passed away. So I got this comment, and I hate it how YouTube, this happened just within like the last couple months. They started putting the handle right here as I'm looking at comments instead of the username. So this person's name is Sandy K. Parton, but they just put the handle. So whatever, YouTube. But Sandy said, the day after Ezra Taft Benson died, wind gusts of 100 to 5. Well, and then she basically copied and pasted something from something that we're about to look at. So President Benson, okay, Ezra Taft Benson, 13th president of the church. He passed away May 30th, 1994. Okay, May 30th. And what happened? The next day in Utah, on May 31st, the last day of the month, there was a 1994 derecho in Utah. I didn't even know that derechos were possible in Utah. It's really odd. Okay, so just like the Salt Lake City tornado in 1999, which incidentally was just 5 years after this. 5 years after this, the tornado. But okay, a derecho in Utah, the Utah-Wyoming derecho of May 31st, 1994. On Tuesday, May 31st, 1994, an area of thunderstorms that formed before dawn over southern Nevada intensified as it moved northeast across western and central Utah during the mid to late morning. The storms assumed a broad arc-shaped configuration and accelerated northeast across northern and eastern Utah during the afternoon, reaching southwest Wyoming, southeast Idaho, and northwest Colorado later in the day. The convective system finally weakened over central Wyoming around sunset. After having produced a nearly continuous 340-mile-long swath of damaging wind that included numerous measured gusts well above severe limits. And here's basically what it kind of looked like. And as you can see, Salt Lake is right in the path. It's like basically right in the middle of the path. President Benson passes away, and the day afterwards, this happens. This is now the second time that someone passes away and then there's an event like this. So there's this one with President Benson, but then in 2021, there was Elder Dean Davies from North Salt Lake. He passed away. 2 days later, there was a tornado in North Salt Lake. It was just an E1, so it was smaller. But nevertheless, tornadoes are rare along the Wasatch Front. And derechos are rare in Utah. I'm not even sure if there ever has been any other derecho. Maybe there has, but they're rare. All right, continuing. While the convectively induced windstorm easily qualified as a derecho, what was most unusual about the event was its location over the Intermountain West. Derecho producing convective systems are relatively uncommon west of the Rocky Mountains because sufficient moisture typically is not present in the lower troposphere to support establishment of the strong, long-lived cold pools that foster the regenerative thunderstorm activity of derechos. In this case, moisture was quite limited by central and eastern United States standards. Surface dew point temperatures were in the mid 40s to low 50s Fahrenheit. It was nevertheless enough to support derecho development, given the presence of other meteorological factors discussed below that were favorable for regenerative storms. The event was also unusual in that the convection crossed areas of significantly elevated terrain without dissipating. The terrain irregularities can negatively impact the organization and sustenance of thunderstorms, especially those strongly dependent on cold pools for development and organization. I could go into convection, if I remember right from my aviation days, is just the upward movement of of air. The movement caused within a fluid by the tendency of hotter and therefore less dense material to rise and colder, denser material to sink under the influence of gravity. Okay, so convection, up and down, whatever. Okay. And there's like an animation so you can see it. I'll show you in just a minute. The strongest measured wind gust in the event, 140 miles per hour. Again, let's look at the Saffir-Simpson scale. How does that compare to a hurricane? This would be the equivalent of a Category 4 hurricane in terms of wind speed, which is 130 to 156 miles per hour. Can you believe that? And I'm assuming that was probably in Utah. Maybe it was up in Wyoming. Let's see. Was recorded on Camelback Mountain in the Dugway Proving Ground southwest of Salt Lake City. Oh, I didn't know that Utah had a Camelback Mountain. In the Phoenix area, there's a Camelback Mountain that's on the north side of Phoenix, and it's like, you have Camelback Road and stuff. Anyway, I didn't know that until just now. The high winds damaged many structures at the Tooele Army Depot and blew empty storage containers the size of semi-trailers off railroad flat cars. A chicken farm... Oh no, chickens. A chicken farm in Lakeshore, Utah received $400,000 in structural damage. Some of the most intense damage, however, occurred farther east. Winds gusted to 105 miles per hour in the Provo area. So what is that? That would be equivalent to Category 2 hurricane in Provo. Okay, that's weird. Toppling thousands of trees and damaging many homes and buildings, some significantly. Damage to the campus of Brigham Young University alone totaled $1 million. 16 people were injured in Provo, including a girl hit by a falling air conditioner. On the south shore of the Great Salt Lake, part of the roof of the Saltair Pavilion was destroyed. If you don't know what Saltair is, it's kind of a landmark, really. I thought they called it the Salt Palace, though. Did they change the name? Salt Palace. Salt Palace, Utah. Salt Palace Convention Center. I could have sworn. I guess it's been that long. Okay, whatever this. No, you're right. No, I remember now. Yeah, the Salt Palace, that's in downtown. Just forget that I said that. Just forget it. Okay. So, Saltair. This is like a place where they do like concerts and dances and stuff like that. Okay, Saltair. So part of this was damaged. Part of the roof of the Salt Air Pavilion was destroyed, with the damage estimated at $270,000. The peak gust at Salt Lake International Airport was 62 miles per hour, where a DC-3 plane was moved 1/4 mile down the runway. At least 20 utility poles caught fire as the wind severed electrical lines in Salt Lake City. I might as well do this. Let's look up DC-3. So, a plane like this, blown down the runway, Salt Lake International Airport. Okay, here's the... Okay, right now it's going backwards, but it's going to loop around. And you'll see it like from right here going up like this. Here it goes. There it goes. There's the Derecho. The day after President Benson passes away. Yet another unusual aspect of the May 31st Derecho was that it occurred behind rather than along or ahead of the cold front that moved northeast across the region in association with the upper trough. So a whole bunch of unusuals with this. In summary, the May 31st, 1994 Utah-Wyoming derecho is a good example of a hybrid type event occurring in an environment with very limited moisture. So I think that was like, okay, one unusual. You know what? Control F, unusual. That one's just recapping what it said earlier. So you have 1, 2, 3. 3 different ways that this was unusual. So I think there's probably something to it. What it means, I don't know. Ezra Taft Benson was... he stood out, as many of you know, when it comes to basically calling out secret combinations. He called out communism seeping into society. He called out secret combinations. And if you'll recall, let me go to my prophets phrase tracker. He's the only other one that would compare to President Nelson in terms of how many times he talked about the second coming. As of right now, President Nelson is at 22 different talks since he started talking in General Conference. So not just when he was president of the church, but regardless of calling. 22 General Conference talks mentioning the second coming. Ezra Taft Benson, 21. Here, let me zoom in more. Okay. And actually, Ezra Taft Benson beats out President Nelson in terms of using the phrase last days at 25. President Nelson at 12, sorry. But you can see, just going on a little bit of a tangent, President Nelson has said a lot of these other key words or terms like hasten, comes again, hastening, he returns. And if you total all these up right here, all these different terms, and you tally it up, President Nelson by far, well, not by far, but he takes the cake in terms of second coming related words and terms. But after that would be President Benson, if you don't count the very first few presidents of the church. But that's going by tally. Again, they back in those days used the term last days a lot more, but not so much second coming. But now, you know, it seems like second coming is used more. And then up here I have you have all the apostles right now living in line of succession or seniority, and none of them come close to either President Nelson or President Benson with using the term second coming. But, you know, they still have time left. But anyway, so I don't know. I guess it would make sense when you think about Ezra Taft Benson, his legacy. In fact, he was another one, by the way. If we go to my quotes, rising generation, let me zoom out. He also made a number of generational quotes, where these are things where basically he's telling his audience that they are the generation of the second coming. So the first one that I have, I better do this, Control F, Ezra Taft. Okay. So the first one that I have on my list is from 1979. Okay. And then after that, again in 1981. And then after that, 86, 87. And it looks like that's it. But that's quite a bit compared to these other people that show up on this spreadsheet. Let me just give you a little taste in case you haven't seen those videos. I have a playlist called Rising Generation that covers all these. So if you want to go through all the quotes that I have so far, go to my Rising Generations playlist on YouTube, and you can find that. I have a whole playlist dedicated to them talking about specific generations and then just the general concept of the rising generation, which people that don't do any research will always come on and be like, they've always said that. It's the most, I can, look, it doesn't make me too mad, but it makes me a little bit mad. If you haven't put in the time and effort to actually search, you can't just make statements like that. Because I am somebody who has put in a lot of work trying to find anybody from any period of time that has said that this is the generation. And that is not true. The quotes only start in 1967. As far as I know, there could be more out there. If you have any, send them my way and I'll add them to this spreadsheet. But 1967 is the earliest. In Doctrines of Salvation, President Joseph Fielding Smith, he puts some now may see second coming. So he was guessing that in that book in 1936. And then Joseph Smith Jr. himself made a statement about a particular generation. So putting aside Joseph Smith, and by the way, I do a video covering just this idea of Joseph Smith when he talked about a certain generation being the one to see the second coming. So if you put aside Joseph Smith, you put aside Joseph Fielding Smith, no, they haven't always been told that. At least not that I can tell. 1967, that's the earliest quote that I have. But anyway, Ezra Taft Benson, he shows up on this playlist more than a lot of other people. So that might have something to do with why this took place. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts as to, why him, why not somebody else. You won't be able to convince me that this isn't associated with his passing. It absolutely is. It's absolutely, in my mind, associated with him passing away. What it means, I don't know. But whatever it means, would have to justify all this damage. The Lord's in control. He's in control of the weather. And back then, it's not clear how much control, the governments of the world had over weather or being able to manipulate the weather. So I'm not so sure that this would have been caused by secret combinations of that time. But if it's the Lord that specifically did it, causing all this damage, hurting that girl with the air conditioner, it must have been pretty justified. It must have been that he wanted a lot of people to take notice and view it as a sign of the times or a sign of something. So Let me know what you think about this. Okay, let's move on. The last one. Okay, now we're moving up to 2018, President Nelson's first year as president of the church. And I've already covered this before, but now that I'm adding it to this spreadsheet, we're covering it again. So I got this email from Jen Stevens, and thankfully she sent this email because I forgot about this. So she brought this to my remembrance. Remember Jen Stevens, she's the one that has the Christian Fire Poppy channel. And so I'll put the link for her channel in the description below. She has a really good channel. I've interviewed her, but she is up there in Washington in the Seattle area. And this is what she said. Just reminding you of this to add to the last video about miracles and escaping weather. President Nelson said at Safeco Seattle Field when he came in 2018 that the rains had been delayed by faith. No one got soaked. As soon as all were safely under the roof, it started pouring, but none stood in the rain outside when it was the long line waiting to get in. I recorded that in my notes, and this blog did as well. Oh, okay, yeah. I'll show you the blog. So here are her notes. Okay, she wrote down President Nelson, faith postponed showers, and then she highlights it in red. And then there is a blog. I'm not going to show the top of the blog just because it has like a picture of this guy and his family. But so I'm just going to show this part of it. But the name of the blog is RockyMountainSunshine.com. And he records this too. He says, we then heard from the prophet, seer, and revelator and president of the church, President Russell M. Nelson. He said that he had never spoken at a baseball stadium before, to his memory. He also said that it was by our faith that the forecasted rain showers had been postponed. I had actually been worried about the possibility of rain. So here's another time, and this is reminiscent of this other event that I have on my spreadsheet. When the Independence Visitor Center was being dedicated, there were storms all around, but it did not stop raining until after the dedication was done. So this is like another one where the rain is held back. So we have the Independence Visitor Center and then Safeco Seattle Field. Let me get rid of the highlights here now that I've covered these. Okay, so let's go here. And then I wanted to read just this part as I was studying this. So this is from Deseret News. Seattle crowd of nearly 50,000 hear President Nelson called today the most crucial era in the history of the world. And there's a quote. He says, "We're living in the most crucial era in the history of the world. Since the beginning of time, prophets have foreseen our day and prophesied about what would take place during this winding up period before the Savior comes again. As a church, we need to be doing what the Savior wishes us to do. And as a people, we need to be looking and acting like true followers of Jesus Christ." So I don't need to tell you, oh yeah, look, here's the line of people waiting to get in. So nobody got drenched by the rain. It was held back. So I don't need to tell you, that was actually like his main message this last General Conference, his main talk. It was talking about being peacemakers and being a people that the Savior expects to greet him when he comes, essentially. If you take all the different talks, that seems to be like a big focus right now. Being a people that are worthy, able, and ready. So we need to look like it. Oh gosh. Okay. Sorry, I've been sitting here for a while, getting a little sore. So this is a really neat thing that happened, and this happened recently. So thank you, Jen Stevens, for reminding me of that. I don't know if I covered any other things on the channel that I'm just forgetting. If I'm forgetting something, please let me know, just like Jen Stevens did. Or if there's something that I just don't know about and it's not on this spreadsheet, let me know, and then I'll add it. And then I'll give you credit in column F, if that's all right. That's what I like to do. So let's just do a recap of what we have so far. The first one that I have on this spreadsheet is when it was the night or the evening that Joseph Smith received the gold plates. Heber C. Kimball, along with others, including Brigham Young, they were in the area. I'm not sure about. I think that they were in the area, and they saw manifestations in the sky. That was, what my last video was actually about. So make sure to check that out. I covered that in the last video. They saw a pillar of smoke, essentially, that changed shapes. It moved from one side of one end of the horizon to the other, and they saw what looked like soldiers of their time, marching across the sky and then engaging in battle. Okay, that was September 22nd, 1822. Okay, and then 1830, Parley P. Pratt, in his autobiography, described this very incredible sign vision. He was the only one to view it, but there was basically a pillar of light that surrounded him, and then he saw what sounds like a different type of red light that made the shape of a compass in a square. Well, first a square and then a compass. Okay. Then 1833, November 13th, this was as the Saints were being made to leave Jackson County. Sorry, I'm starting to run out of steam. As they were being persecuted and forced out of Jackson County, there was this really intense meteor shower. The first one recorded in modern times. I covered this in the last video too. 100,000 meteors an hour, and it scared the mobs. They were worried that Judgment Day had arrived. That's how intense this was. All right, so that happened. So all three of these things very specific to the church. Okay, 1873. The same day that David O. McKay was born, the banyan fig tree in Lahaina, Hawaii, was planted. And that city, as you know, has almost entirely burnt down except for a handful of structures. And the banyan tree, even though it was in the middle of the city, it survived. It was burned, but it has survived. So I made a connection between David O. McKay. It's just so unlikely. It's so unlikely that this very famous tree would be planted the same day that he's born. And given the connection that David O. McKay has with BYU Hawaii and the Polynesian Cultural Center, there's no way that that's coincidence. I'm sorry. There's not. Okay, 1971, like we just said, the Independence Visitor Center was dedicated, and the storms were held back until the dedication was done. And then we just covered the Great Daylight Fireball of 1972. A month after President Harold B. Lee became president, and a month before, the Jerusalem branch was organized. Very odd. 1983, there was the flooding in Utah, but including downtown Salt Lake. It seems like had they not diverted the water, it probably would have damaged at least something on Temple Square. But I don't know that for sure, but it doesn't seem that any church property was damaged that I know of. Okay, the 1994 Utah derecho. I'm just going to put Utah. Well, okay, I'll do Utah, Wyoming. It's fine. Fine. The Utah-Wyoming derecho that we just talked about, the day after oh my gosh, Ezra Taft Benson, Jared, the day after he passed away, he had this very, very unusual derecho that went through Utah. 5 years later, the downtown Salt Lake City tornado, also very rare, very strange. It touched Temple Square and the temple itself just a few months before the millennium began. And I know, we've talked about centuries and millennia a million times. Well, not a million times, but we've talked about it before on the channel. I know that it wasn't until 2001 that 2,000 years had been completed, because there's no year zero. So if you're in year one, okay, January 1st, year one, you have to wait until January 1st, year two, before 1 year has gone by. So people will be like, well, the millennium didn't start until whatever. I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe in some ways it is, maybe some ways it's not. I don't know how that plays into the timing of the second coming and events related to the second coming. But it is, you're right, that 2,000 years had not been completed until 2001. So whatever. Okay. 2010, there was the Provo Tabernacle that was burnt down by fire. And inside the tabernacle, there was the portrait, or the painting, rather, the painting of Christ coming for the as part of the second coming. You know, the second coming painting by Harry Anderson. And everything on that painting was charred except for Christ himself. If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. The 2017 eclipse, the path of totality had to take a specific course in order to cover both Independence, Missouri, which is the center place of New Jerusalem, and Adamon-Diamond. It had to take that course. It couldn't be off by a few miles, otherwise they would not have been in the path of totality. Later that year, just a month later, the Revelation 12 sign occurred, the day of the women's session of General Conference. All right, 2018, we just covered this. The rain postponed by the faith of the people there, as President Nelson was there to talk to them. March 18th of 2020, the earthquake in Magna, Utah, caused the angel Moroni on top of the Salt Lake Temple to drop his trumpet. It was the 77th day of the year. 2 days later, the missionaries come home, or the first presidency message goes out about the missionaries coming home. And then I already forgot, but I think 2 days after, a day or two after that, all temples were closed. September 2nd, 2021, the North Salt Lake tornado that I was talking about earlier happened 2 days after Elder Dean Davies from North Salt Lake passed away. January 15th, you had the, I always forget the name of it, the Hunga Hapai. I don't know. The Tonga volcano went off, and there was a tsunami. And on the island of Atata, which is part of Tonga, all structures were destroyed except for the church building. And again, this is the most, like, by percentage, this is the most LDS nation in the world. 63% of their citizens are members of the church. August 13th of 2022, another meteor over Utah. This one caused a boom, and it was on the mirror date of the angel Moroni dropping his trumpet. Moroni dropped his trumpet on 3/18, March 18th. Everything went quiet. And then on 8/13, or August 13th, we had this loud event that took place. And not just that it was loud, but that the previous General Conference, there was a big call out for people to go on missions. September 9th of last year, President Nelson, the day after Queen Elizabeth passes away, the longest reigning British monarch, she passes away The day after that, President Nelson has his birthday, becoming the oldest apostle or prophet of this dispensation when you're going by years, okay? Instead of like months, so, you know, because he technically became oldest earlier that year, but by years, it was on that day, the day after Queen Elizabeth passed away. Very odd. The Nauvoo Derecho. Now we're into this year, and this was just a few weeks ago. In fact, this was about a month ago that this happened. There was a Pioneer Trek youth group that were out doing the trek, and they got to safety just in the nick of time. As they got to safety, there was a tree that fell on the truck, I guess, that had brought them to wherever, the shelter. I've actually reached out to this person, the person that was in that interview on that news website. I'm going to see if I can talk to her or somebody else that she knows and see if I could do an interview, just like, I don't know, just talk about it and hear it directly from them. Okay. And now, earlier this month, Lahaina, Hawaii was destroyed. I know that there was the Catholic Church that survived, and that's great. And there could be a symbol in that too. It's not just us that are going to survive into the millennium. If you're Catholic, Buddhist, Jewish, Hindu, whatever, and you're living an upright terrestrial lifestyle, you will continue on into the millennium. And there's still going to be other churches at the beginning, including the Catholic Church. So that could be part of that symbol. But the fact of the matter is that the majority of the city burnt down, the vast majority. The only things that survived, Catholic Church, and then both of our chapels. And one of them was definitely in the burn area, and somehow it survived. Let's just look at that really quick. I know I've already done this, but you know, who cares? I think it's good to repeat things because it helps you remember. There's things that could easily just like slip your memory or fade over time, but repetition keeps it fresh. So speaking of Buddhism, look, Buddha at Lahaina Jodo mission. Where the heck was it? I know it's somewhere around here. Let's just do fine. Well, there's that one right there. So this one survived. That's not the one I was looking for. This one survived. And there were like this thing right here, whatever this, it looks like it's a restaurant. This burnt down, and all these houses on this side of this ditch burnt down, and there were some buildings over here that burnt down too. But fine, okay. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Lahaina. That's saying that it's some other chapel. Oh my gosh. LDS meeting house locator. Don't worry, we'll take care of this. We'll take care of it. Sorry, just sometimes there's impromptu things that I want to cover. Yeah, look. Malo Street and Kaniau Road. That's this building. Look, Kaniau Road. But they have this listed as like some other church. Oh, no, they don't. Okay, never mind. It says down here, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I guess they have like I think the Tongans. I want to say someone told me that it's like a Kongan. Wow, the Kongans are there. It's a Tongan branch, I think, or ward. Let me click on this. Does it say? No. That's fine. Whatever. So the point is that you can see that like this easily could have gone down along with everything else that was around it, but it didn't. That's the moral of the story. Okay. And then coming up in October, we have this eclipse that's going to pass through Utah, and strangely, the path of totality is going to take the only path. Let me pull this up. Temple map. I always have to search it this way or else it doesn't come up. Map. I might as well... LDS temples. Might as well bookmark this as much as I use it. The path of totality of this eclipse takes the only path that it can take to miss the maximum number of temples. Okay, it misses the maximum number of temples. It goes through here. It's going to go over the Monticello. People have kindly corrected me. The Monticello, Utah temple. It's going to go over the Manti temple, even though it's decommissioned. Okay, it looks like I was wrong. It looks like Ephraim. So, because there's a temple in Ephraim, it looks like Ephraim is going to be in the path of totality. So, based on this, someone brought that up in a comment. So, but even so, okay, if you were tasked with putting an eclipse, like a path of totality through Utah, but you have to include the least number of temples in the path, what would you draw? It would be this right here. The only other way is if somehow, maybe if there was an eclipse that went through here and only hit Ephraim and Manti. I don't know how likely it is to have a path go nearly horizontal like that, but I don't know for this latitude. But either way, the fact of the matter is, well, no, think about this. Look, the Ephraim Utah temple, it's not even constructed yet. So, oh my gosh. So look, not constructed, and Manti is decommissioned right now. And so Utah, the one location compared to other states, compared to countries of the world, it has the most number of temples. And there's a path of totality coming through here from an eclipse, and it's only going to go over one temple, the Monticello, Utah temple. That is extremely unlikely. That is extremely unlikely. Because once the renovations are done with the Manti Utah temple, or once the Ephraim temple is constructed, then it's going to become even harder. It may even be impossible at that point, because the path would have to go right through here between Cedar City and Manti, which I'm not sure if it's possible. It could be, but as far as the width goes, I don't know. So that's very odd. All right, and then we have the 2024 eclipse that's going to take place the day after General Conference, and it's going to go over the Sacred Grove and the Kirtland Temple. So this is a lot of really incredible things. Our faith shouldn't be based on these things, but I feel like they help promote faith, It's like either you have the eyes to see and ears to hear, or you don't. So at that point, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, it's not like it's going to convince you. It's just going to be like, oh, I can see that this is true. Rather than, oh, okay, you convinced me. All right, I know that the church is true. Whew. Okay, this one was a doozy. I hope you enjoyed it, though. Again, if you have anything else to add to this list, please let me know, because I think it'd be amazing just to have as much as possible on all these spreadsheets. Okay, but that's going to be it for this time. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.